Hello, Grumpy Old Fart here. I have not done a game review of a game called Boot Hill because I have not played it. My friends and I loved westerns growing up, and we really wanted to play it. It's a role playing game based on the Old West, and we'd heard all kinds of good stuff about it. But we had never back in the day, we didn't have a lot of gaming stores. The internet didn't exist. We didn't have. Yes, I'm old. I predate the internet, but we couldn't find a way to order the game Boot Hill. We really wanted to play, but we couldn't. We couldn't find it anywhere. So they really wanted to play. So I made a homemade version of it. I called it Outlaw Trails. And it's not a bad game. It was very crude, but it was playable. So we had fun with it. In the years since then, I have redesigned it, refined it, made it a lot more playable, and I still run it with my son and his cousin on his channel, Arcane Gaming. He and his cousin talk about it in a video called "Memories of the Bank Bandits." So we're still playing it. It's a fun game, and it's a completely homemade version. I did research on the guns, on the prices and everything. It's a completely homemade version. I call it Outlaw Trails. Now, but originally, years ago, with this crude version that I made, my friends wanted to play, and there were 5 of us, and I was the game master. And so the 4 players we had were Kevin from Other Stories, Bobby from Other Stories, and Michael and Edward, the 2 brothers from the Star Trek Butterfingers video that's going to be up shortly. So the scenario that I had set up was that there were some outlaws that had raided a town, and they'd stole a bunch of stuff, but it wasn't nothing major, big, except for they had kidnapped 3 women and were taking them off. And for God knows what, but they was the bad guys. And our intrepid group of adventurers heard about this because they arrived in town, and the local sheriff was just coming back in town. He had taken a posse after these bad guys. And he had they had caught up to him, and the bad guys had shot him full of holes. Most of them were dead, and of course they gave up. So relatives of these women that had been kidnapped hired the group. Long story short, hired the group to go and find them and bring them back. And since the town had given up on them, they didn't really care about the loot, the other loot, and what all other that the outlaws had taken. They just wanted the women back. That's what they were paying for. And part of the proviso was, if they could get the women back, whatever else that the outlaws had, they could keep. Because the relatives of these women were a little upset that the town had given up on finding these women. So, and I could understand that, So we had our 5 players, four players, and a game master. I was the game master. We had Kevin, Bobby, Michael, and Edward. Now, Kevin, I don't remember these other players' characters, but Kevin was running a character he made the character's name was Juan Gomez. And Juan Gomez is infamous in our little gaming circle for doing everything possible wrong. He couldn't get anything right. And since this particular game, every time you see Kevin, a lot of people still call him Juan for that. And it's not a racial slur or anything, but it's just a nickname he got because of this. Anyway, long story short, they set off after these bad guys, and they caught up with them, and there was a huge shootout, and Kevin got wounded really bad. His character got wounded real bad, but the outlaws had escaped with the women, and so they healed up, rested the night, and took out after him again. Kevin, I can make it. Okay, so he took off again. So they're going after these women, these outlaws rather, trying to get the women back. And Kevin got wounded in his left leg. So he got wounded in the torso, and then he got wounded in the left leg. And the Outlaws escaped again. And Kevin bandaged himself up. I'm ready to go. I can go. Okay, fine. So they took off again after. And Kevin got wounded in his right leg the next time they met him. And was hurt real bad. And couldn't climb up onto the horse. But he didn't want to quit. Oh no, I want to continue. I can still shoot. I'm good, you know. But he couldn't climb up into his horse. So he kept bugging us and bugging him, you know, the player, other guys. He kept bugging him and bugging him and bugging him. And finally they said, okay, fine. So they set him up in the saddle and they tied him to the stirrups. They tied his feet in and they lashed him to the horse. So he's sitting up in the saddle. He can ride, you know, and they're leading the horse, but they can ride. He can ride, and he's got a pistol in each. You know, he's got a couple pistols. I think one of them was a big horse pistol, Colt's Dragoon, 44 caliber, big. It's for those of you who don't know, in the Old West, the Colt's Dragoon was something as close to a Magnum as you could get. It's the big gun, big black powder pistol. But he had one of those, and then he had another pistol. And so he's tied up in this horse, and they're chasing these outlaws again, and they finally caught up to him. And it was a huge shootout. A couple of other guys got killed, but in the process, or wounded, not killed, excuse me. But in the process, Kevin's horse spooked during all the gunfire and took off running across a field. He's going the wrong direction, and he can't really get the horse turned around. So he ends up having to drop one of his pistols to try to grab the reins. And in trying to grab the reins, he missed a dexterity check and dropped his other pistol. So he's down there trying to find the reins, and he can't leave the horse. He can't fall off. He can't jump off because he's tied in. Horse is running like hell. And there was a cliff over there. It was what do you call it? It was stated earlier in the game that they were alongside a ridge, and there was a steep cliff and a drop off. And this horse turned and ran right off that cliff with Kevin tied to it. And it ended up going head over heels with Kevin tied to it, and it broke him backwards. Kevin's character literally got broken in half, and he died because he wouldn't quit. So, sometimes it's better to say, guys, you go on ahead, I'll stay here, you know. But that didn't happen. Name of this story is Knowing When to Quit. So Kevin may have learned that by now, I don't know, but he's kind of hard-headed. He's a hell of a good guy. You folks have a good day. God bless one and all.